Hi kids, I'm Wilbur Walnut, and I'm here to introduce to you Fluffy the Forest Cat, a story written by my old friend Jim, an Omni-Gothic Neo-Futurist. Omni-Gothic Neo-Futurist? Now that sounds just crazy. Can you say Omni-Gothic Neo-Futurist? I mean, why would you want to? I have lived over 100 years, and I have to say Jim is one of the craziest people I have ever met. But I also have to say, his Fluffy the Forest Cat story is a pretty good one. I mean, who doesn't like cats? Well, actually, Jim doesn't like cats that much, but he knows other people like cats, so he wrote a story about a little kitten named Fluffy. Jim does like chipmunks, so watch for one in the story named Minnie. Jim has tried to have some video pictures to go along with the story, but I think the best part is the words. They are kind of like sing-song music, so you listen to them carefully. After watching the story a few times, you can join in with the sing-song words if you want to. Now, maybe you've read other stories about animals and their adventures, like Curious George or Bye-Bye the Elephant. These were stories where animals living in their home were taken out of nature. They were animals who were kidnapped and taken to the big city. These stories made it seem like taking children out of nature to the big city was a good thing. In Fluffy the Forest Cat, it doesn't go just like that. Listen, watch, and find out. Getting back to animal stories. Is a toad driving a car really about the toad, or is it trying to tell us something about cars? I was born before there were many cars in olden times, when toads were free to hop around with traps on their backs, trying to fool tricksters. Today, a bunch of crazy toads all over the world are driving around everywhere in fast cars. I mean, who needs crazy rich toads driving cars? Monetizing everything in the world, including amphibians, sounds like things are getting out of hand and something should be done about it. Can you say algorithm? I mean, why would you want to? It has gotten so crazy that today algorithms are now driving the toads around and around in circles. Okay, getting back to my crazy friend Jim and his story. He thought taking animals out of nature was crazy. So his story is a little different because people today are starting to believe in different things. Like, rather than kidnapping, we should have little hearts of green. Oops. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. It's part of the story. So, if you want to watch Fluffy the Forest Cat instead, that's a good idea. So you listen, watch, and find out what happens. And if you like the story, you can tell Jim in the comments. Is your favorite character Fluffy? Is your favorite character Minnie? Maybe your favorite is the rushing woman. And for some crazy reason, everybody seems to love that crazy seed-hogging squirrel named Grumpy. Can you say self-identification and laugh at yourself? Goodbye for now. Hope you enjoy the story. The first chapter should be showing up right about now.
Fluffy the Forest Cat. Chapter 1. Fluffy and Minnie. Fluffy was a forest cat, a black and white tuxedo cat, the kind of cat who liked to hide in bushes. Many who saw him called him a scaredy cat because he would often run away. But just because Fluffy was a quiet cat, it didn't mean he wasn't also a brave cat. You see, Fluffy was a sensitive cat, a thinking cat, a cat that liked to crawl under leaves and hide. He spent his days watching. He spent his days dreaming. And yes, sometimes he was all alone. But he was also a cat with a little heart of green. Minnie was a chipmunk, a bouncy little bundle, brown and white. She hopped here, she hopped there, she collected seeds everywhere. She collected in spring, she collected in summer, and like crazy, she collected in fall. Minnie was a playful bubble that neatly packed all she could find into her hidden home. She spent her days busy, and no, she was never lonely, or so she thought. This is partly the story of how Fluffy ran away from the city. You see, city people wanted to rescue him, even though Fluffy liked to live on his own. They chased him. They caught him. They put this pretty tuxedo cat in their house. They saved Fluffy in the same way Minnie saved seeds that fell from the trees. But Fluffy was a forest cat, a cage-escaping trickster cat, a black and white tuxedo cat who one day would come to live by a mountain lake where branches brushed soft against gentle ground. It would be the perfect place for a forest cat. This is also partly the story of how Minnie learned to slow down and not be so afraid. You see, Minnie ran all day long, and mostly she ran because she was afraid. Minnie lived in a forest, and her home was in a little hole up a hill. It was a secret den she had dug at the foot of a tree. She didn't want other chipmunks to steal her seeds, and she was afraid big animals would come and eat her up. Coming and going from her home, she would zip. Zipping is how she would leave. Zipping is how she would come back. She would zip right up the hill, quick as a flash, her tail a flick down the hole. And if you were very, very careful, watched very, very quietly, after she disappeared into the ground, you would see her little nose pop up, and two bright brown eyes would check to see if anyone had learned the secret of her hidden seeds. Both Fluffy and Minnie had been born wild. Only Fluffy had been born wild in the city, and Minnie had been born wild in the country. So when they met, they didn't quite know what to think of each other. Fluffy was a cat, a forest cat, a thinking cat, a cage-escaping trickster cat. Minnie was a chipmunk, a seed-collecting monk, a zipping back-and-forth monk, a chip with two bright brown eyes and a soft little nose. Fluffy was supposed to eat Minnie for his supper. Minnie was supposed to run away and hate cats of all kinds. But it didn't go just like that. Would you like me to tell you the story of how Minnie and Fluffy became friends? Chapter 2. Grumpy. Once upon a time there was a squirrel who lived high in the trees, but down on the ground he liked to chase a chipmunk called Minnie. Whenever Minnie came close to the lake to collect seeds, this squirrel would run down his tree and chase her. His name was Grumpy. Mostly Grumpy ran on branches. He jumped between swaying leaves. He chattered, he yelled, he went this way. He chattered, he yelled, he went that way. He chattered, he yelled, he went every which way. And as Grumpy raced back and forth through the trees, seeds and nuts fell to the ground. Seeds fell this way. Seeds fell that way. Grumpy chattered at spinning seeds as they fell to the ground. Grumpy yelled at tumbling nuts as they fell to the ground. This crazy squirrel thought he owned the clearing by the lake, and he didn't like it very much when pesky little chipmunks came to steal any of his seeds or nuts that fell to the ground. "My seeds, my seeds, my seeds," he chattered. "My seeds, my seeds, my seeds," he yelled. Grumpy wasn't big. Mostly, Grumpy was grumpy. But Grumpy was fast, and he was a little bit bigger than Minnie, and if he ever caught her, he would bite her tail right off. And often this is exactly what he tried to do. Nip, 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 as he ran after her. Minnie and Grumpy was a big cartoon show that came on first thing in the morning, and it lasted all day long. At times, Grumpy came so close to catching Minnie it would make you scared, but Minnie always got away, and then she would come back to try and get more of those seeds. At times, it was so funny it would make you laugh. All day long, that hyperactive squirrel chased that crazy seed-collecting chipmunk. Then one day something happened. Would you like me to tell you the exciting thing that happened? I will. But first, I'm going to tell you more about Fluffy, because I'm sure you haven't forgot about Fluffy and want to know more about him too. And don't miss Minnie and Grumpy too much, because they will be back in this story a little bit later. Chapter 3. Fluffy's Heart of Green. Fluffy always thought he was little. He was born in the back alley of a rundown city, in a rundown country, in a rundown world. But his mother was an alley cat who belonged to no one but her children, and when it was time to give birth to her little baby, she didn't give birth to them in an overturned garbage can, or in a pile of cardboard boxes, or under the broken steps of an old porch. She found a lonely, bright green bush that snuggled its leaves all the way to the ground. It was in this back alley, under this bush, that Fluffy, the forest cat, was born. You see, when he opened his little green kitten eyes for the very first time, he didn't see a dirty city. He saw the bright magic green of the forest. And after that eye-opening moment, for the rest of his life, no matter where he would be, he was a forest cat with a growing heart of green. Fluffy was a forest cat, a thinking cat, a cage-escaping trickster cat. And even if a red-suited Santa Claus picked him up, carried Fluffy in a reindeer sleigh all the way to the North Pole, all the way to the land of ice and snow, all the way to the land of endless presents and candy, this thinking cat, this cage-escaping trickster cat, this black and white tuxedo cat, would always be a forest cat. Fluffy's heart always sang with green. It was love that had made Fluffy's heart green. And I know you want me to tell you a little more about that. Chapter 4. Fluffy's Mummy. Fluffy's love began with his mummy. Fluffy's mummy loved her kittens with a heart as big as the world, and this is why she made her home for them in a back alley bush. She was a real street fighter, and if any dog or big cat or even people came close to her brood of baby kittens, she arched her back, bristled her hair, bared long sharp claws, became very, very quiet, and looked right back at whoever was threatening her secret kittens. She would stare them right in the eyes, and they would know this was a fierce cat afraid of nothing. She was a wild mother protecting kittens. But she also had to eat. Fluffy was born in a big, busy city. People went this way in a hurry. People went that way in a hurry. People went every which way in a hurry, and as people raced back and forth on the streets, they dropped garbage everywhere. They were just like that crazy squirrel Grumpy, who ran around knocking more seeds out of the trees than he could ever eat himself. Without knowing it, people had made the perfect home for mice and rats in their city. The wild mice and rats loved running back and forth in this world of overflowing garbage. Zipping mice and zipping rats tried to clean up some of the gobbledygook that fell from people's houses and fast cars. Rats zipped this way to get garbage. Mice zipped that way to get gobbledygook. Mice and rats zipped every which way, just like Minnie, who was trying to clean up all the seeds that crazy squirrel Grumpy knocked down to the ground. And like Grumpy, these people thought they owned the world, and when they saw mice and rats, they would get grumpy too. My garbage, my garbage, my garbage, people chattered at the rats. My garbage, my garbage, my garbage, people yelled at the mice. A perfect place for wild mice and rats is also a perfect place for wild cats. When there are lots and lots of mice and rats, soon wild cats show up. It is the job of city cats to eat some of the mice and rats, in the same way it is the job of mice and rats to eat up some of the overflowing garbage. And for some reason, people seem to think it is their job to try and eat everything in the world. But they can't eat everything in the world, so they make garbage instead. This is because people are crazy. Sometimes people are grumpy like squirrels, but mostly people are just crazy. People have forgotten to have hearts of green. But I know you have a little heart of green, and that is why I will tell you more about Fluffy. Chapter 5. Fluffy gets put in a cage. Fluffy never forgot that his heart was green. When Fluffy was a kitten, one day his mother needed to leave the back alley bush and catch some mice for her supper. While she was away, a man with a yellow hat came along and picked up Fluffy and put him in a shoebox. Fluffy was taken to a place where people adopt lost cats. This was crazy, because for Fluffy, the green bush with his mommy was his home, and now that he had been taken away from it, he felt lost for the first time in his life. But his little green heart kept pumping love, and Fluffy became a very, very quiet kitten. For a little while, Fluffy was a black and white tuxedo kitten, a watching kitten, a little kitten trapped in a cage. But Fluffy was such a pretty kitten, it wasn't long before a rich woman with a big purse came along and adopted him. For a while, Fluffy lived in a big fancy house with the rich woman and 4 other cats. He was warm. He was well fed. He had other cats for company. But he could never go outside. Most of these house cats liked living inside because they had been born in a house. When the rich woman with the big purse left in the morning to go rush this way and go rush that way, she turned on the television. The 4 other cats spent their days sitting on the couch watching this crazy box. When something moved on the TV, their heads went this way. When something moved on the TV, their heads went that way. Their heads went every which way all day long as their 4 fat cat bodies sank into the couch. Fluffy, the kitten, sat on a window ledge in the kitchen looking outside. "Why don't you watch TV?" asked the first fat cat. "Why don't you watch TV?" asked the second fat cat. "Why don't you watch TV?" asked the third fat cat. "Why don't you watch TV?" asked the fourth fat cat. "I'm reading the world," Fluffy replied as he looked outside, watching a city squirrel run back and forth in a tree. Fluffy was warm. Fluffy was well fed. Fluffy had the other cats for company, but he could never go outside. He liked the window ledge in the kitchen where he could watch the big green world outside. But there was another place in the house he liked. Do you want me to tell you about it and how Fluffy got his name? Chapter 6. How Fluffy got his name. Fluffy was a very shy kitten when the rich woman first brought him home to her house. Fluffy ran away whenever the other cats or even the woman tried to get close to him. This wasn't because Fluffy was a scaredy cat. Fluffy was a quiet kitten, a shy kitten, the kind of kitten who would like to hide in bushes. And on one of her tables, the rich woman had a bright green bush that draped its leaves all the way to the floor. Fluffy liked to crawl under the branches of this bush and curl up. It reminded Fluffy of the bright green back alley bush his mother had found in the run-down part of town where he was born. Fluffy liked to curl up under this bush. He was totally hidden, and he could quietly remember his mother as he purred away, thinking no one else could see him. "Where's that kitten?" asked the first fat cat. "Where's that kitten?" asked the second fat cat. "Where's that kitten?" asked the third fat cat. "Where's that kitten?" asked the fourth fat cat. But something gave his hiding place away. Do you know what it was? One day, the rich woman saw a little black tail with a white tip sticking out from underneath her big green plant. The new kitten was hiding. Very, very quietly, the rich woman watched the tail flick this way. The draping branches jiggled. The tail flicked that way. The draping branches jiggled. The tail flicked this way. The branches jiggled. Flick that way, jiggle. Flick this way, jiggle. Flick that way, jiggle. Jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. Very, very quietly, the rich woman listened. This new kitten, who kept running away from her, was now purring. "This plant is the perfect place for this kitten," thought the rich woman. Very, very quietly and very, very carefully, she tiptoed up to the plant. Then very, very quietly and very, very carefully, she put her hand under the bush and tenderly touched Fluffy. "What's this?" thought Fluffy. Very, very quietly and very, very carefully, the woman stroked the soft fur she could feel inside the bush. Fluffy could tell it was the woman. He didn't know what to think at first, but he knew these gentle fingers were not going to hurt him, so he crouched down and let the woman continue to pet him as he hid under the green plant. "Fluffy is a forest kitten," the woman whispered. Fluffy was a forest kitten, a pretty kitten, a purring kitten, a kitten hiding happily under a green bush. So now Fluffy had two places in the rich woman's house that he liked. Did Fluffy the forest kitten like sitting in front of the TV all day long? No, he liked being quiet under that green bush and sitting in the kitchen window looking outside at the big green world. Would you like me to tell you about how Fluffy got out into that big green world and how he had even more adventures? Chapter 7. Fluffy Escapes. Fluffy the forest kitten sat in the kitchen window reading the world outside, and every day he got a little bit bigger. And bigger. And bigger. And bigger. One day Fluffy was too big to be called a kitten. He was now Fluffy the cat. Fluffy the black and white tuxedo cat, the watching cat, the thinking cat, the cage-escaping trickster cat. But most of all, he was always Fluffy the forest cat. Now houses have doors and windows that open and close, and it didn't take long for a watching cat, a thinking cat, a cage-escaping trickster cat to figure this out. Fluffy watched the woman of this house zip out the kitchen door. Fluffy watched the woman of this house zip in the kitchen door. Zip out the door, zip in the door. Fluffy, being a forest cat, didn't know much about doors, but he did know this was how the woman got outside. Fluffy's favorite room in the house became the kitchen, and his favorite place in the kitchen became the dishwasher. And this was because when he sat on the dishwasher, he could look out the kitchen window. But there was another reason. The dishwasher was right beside the kitchen door. In the morning, Fluffy sat on the dishwasher and watched the woman zip out. The door went click when she shut it behind her. In the evening, Fluffy sat on the dishwasher and watched the woman zip in. The door went click when she shut it behind her. On the weekend, Fluffy sat on the dishwasher and watched the woman zip in and out all day long. Click, click, click went the door every time it shut. But one day, the door did something different. This morning the rich woman was in a big hurry, and she forgot her big purse before she zipped out the door. Click went the door behind her as she zipped out. But then she zipped back into the house to get her purse, and she zipped back out again. Click went the door behind her as she zipped out. But this time she forgot her lunch, so she zipped back in to get her lunch, and she zipped back out again. Again the door went click behind her as she zipped out. She forgot her umbrella. Click went the door. She forgot her laptop. Click went the door. She forgot her hat. Click went the door. She forgot her lipstick. Click went the door. She forgot her bills. Click went the door. She forgot her newspaper. Click went the door. She forgot her car keys. She zipped back in one last time. Zipped back out the door, zipped into her car, zipped out the driveway, zipped across the city, zipped into work, and zipped into her big fancy office where she sat down at her desk. She had her purse, she had her lunch, she had her umbrella, she had her laptop, she had her hat, she had her lipstick, she had her bills, she had her newspaper, she had the keys to her car, but something was missing. Fluffy knew it was missing. Fluffy wasn't just a watching cat. He was also a listening cat. Do you know what was missing? Chapter 8. A Door into a World of Green. Sometimes, when you get an idea in your head, there's a little click that snaps inside your brain. As Fluffy sat on the dishwasher, listening to the door shut over and over again, he kept hearing the door go click as it shut. But then, on that busy, click-click morning, the last time the rich woman rushed out the door, the only click Fluffy heard was a click inside his thinking cat brain. That morning, the last time the woman rushed out the door didn't go click. Fluffy was a forest cat, a listening cat, a thinking cat, a cage-escaping trickster cat, a cat with a little click in his head. Fluffy jumped down from the dishwasher. He looked at the door. A faint draft of air tickled his long cat whiskers. Fluffy stepped a little bit closer to the door. He smelt the door with his pink nose. Fluffy could smell grass. He could smell trees. He could smell faraway places on the little bubble of a breeze that crept into the kitchen through a crack in a door that was just a little bit open. Fluffy took his black and white paw and pushed. The door opened just a little bit. Fluffy pushed the door again. The door opened just a little bit more. Fluffy pushed. The door opened. Fluffy pushed. The door opened. Fluffy pushed, and then he could see outside. There were trees, there were birds, there was the sky, and there was a million smells tickling his little pink nose as he stood in the open doorway. Fluffy was a black and white tuxedo cat, a thinking cat, a watching cat, a listening cat, a cage-escaping trickster cat. But Fluffy wasn't a zipping cat. What would Fluffy do next? Chapter 9. Fluffy the Thinking Cat. Fluffy didn't leave right away. Fluffy was a brave cat, but even brave cats get just a little bit afraid when they're about to do something new. In this house, Fluffy was warm. He was well fed. He had the company of the other 4 cats. He could watch TV all day if he wanted. The zipping woman was very kind to him, and she was fun to watch as she flitted here and there. Fluffy knew if he left her house it would make her sad. Fluffy didn't want to make her sad. And there was one special place in this house Fluffy didn't want to leave. Fluffy stood in the open doorway. He sat down, looked outside, and started to think. Fluffy remembered how safe he felt when he was curled up under the plant. In this house, Fluffy was warm, he was well fed, he had the company of the other 4 cats. The zipping woman was very kind to him. Maybe I should stay, Fluffy thought. Am I a house cat? Fluffy wondered. No, he thought. Am I a kitchen cat? No, Fluffy pondered as he shook his head. Am I a dishwasher cat? That would be crazy. I like sitting in the window and looking outside. Fluffy looked at the other cats sitting on the couch. I don't think I want to be a TV watching cat. Fluffy wasn't sure about who he was. Maybe I'm a window cat. Then he saw his bright green bush, and he remembered what the woman said the day she first touched his soft fur. I'm a forest cat! Fluffy stood up. That is who I am, Fluffy the forest cat. Fluffy put his tail straight up and tiptoed out through the kitchen door, one little step at a time, into the bright green world. At first he stepped slowly, one cat paw, then another little cat paw, and then a little faster, and a little faster, and then away he was bouncing here and there. The sun shone as a black and white tuxedo cat, a thinking cat, a cage-escaping trickster cat traveled here and there, having many adventures, until one day he found himself up in the mountains. Fluffy was a forest cat, a hiding cat, a cat that lived by a mountain lake where branches brushed soft against gentle ground. At last he had found the perfect place for a forest cat with a heart of green. And who do you think Fluffy met in that forest by the mountain lake? Chapter 10. My seeds, my seeds, my seeds. Fluffy spent his days watching as he snuggled under his warm blanket of cedar boughs. He liked to watch everything that happened in the clearing by the lake, but mostly he liked to watch a bouncy little bundle of brown and white. She hopped here, she hopped there. She collected seeds everywhere. She collected in spring, she collected in summer, and like crazy, she collected in fall. She had 2 bright brown eyes and a soft little nose. Her striped tail flicked here, her striped tail flicked there. She was a playful little bubble that zipped whenever she went away to her hole to hide her seeds, and zipped whenever she came back to the clearing to get more seeds. Do you remember what her name was? That's right. Her name was Minnie, and Fluffy wanted to be her friend. Both Fluffy and Minnie had been born wild, only Fluffy had been born wild in the city, and Minnie had been born wild in the country, so when they met, they didn't quite know what to think of each other. Fluffy was a cat, a forest cat, a thinking cat, a cage-escaping trickster cat. Minnie was a chipmunk, a seed-collecting monk, a zipping back-and-forth monk, a chip with 2 bright brown eyes and a soft little nose. Fluffy was supposed to eat Minnie for his supper. Minnie was supposed to run away and hate cats of all kinds. But it didn't go just like that. One day, well, it was every day really, but this day was a little different. On this day, Grumpy was running back and forth in the trees, knocking spinning seeds and tumbling nuts to the ground. My seeds, my seeds, my seeds, he chattered. My seeds, my seeds, my seeds, he yelled. Fluffy, the hiding cat, was under his cedar branches watching this crazy cartoon show. And of course, down on the ground below, Fluffy was also watching, a bundle of brown and white collecting seeds. She stuffed and stuffed her chubby cheeks. Her cheeks were beginning to look like 2 balloons hanging on either side of her overstuffed mouth. But even with her face all blown up, this little chipmunk was cute, soft, and so very, very bouncy. Minnie made Fluffy giggle, and as he watched from under cedar boughs, he began to purr. My seeds! Grumpy yelled down at Minnie. Minnie stopped. "My seeds!" Grumpy chattered. Minnie began to shiver. "My seeds!" Grumpy screeched as he leaped down from the tree. Minnie froze with fear as this crazy squirrel flew down from the sky. Fluffy stood up. Grumpy hit the ground. Nip, 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 nip went sharp teeth. Flick went Minnie's tail, and she zipped into the cedar bushes. Grumpy zipped after her, but when he ran into the bushes, he got a surprise. He banged right into a big face, a black and white face, a cat face. "Ouch!" said the cat as their noses bumped together. "I'm sorry," said Grumpy. "You better be," said the cat. "Goodbye," said Grumpy. Grumpy ran away. He zipped right up a tree, and for a while he was a very, very, very quiet squirrel hiding in a tree. Grumpy had never been quiet before, and it was a nice change for everybody. And who do you think that cat was who Grumpy bumped into? Chapter 11. Are you going to eat me? Fluffy looked down at Minnie. Minnie looked up at Fluffy. "Are you going to eat me?" asked Minnie. "No," said Fluffy. "Cats eat chipmunks," said the very worried little chipmunk. "I want to be your friend." Fluffy did his best to look friendly. He smiled. Unfortunately, when cats smile, they also show their teeth. "I can't be friends with a cat," Minnie said as she looked at Fluffy's big white teeth. "Why not?" asked Fluffy. "Cats eat chipmunks." Minnie wanted to zip away. Fluffy looked down at Minnie and smiled even wider. He was trying very, very hard not to scare her. However, an even bigger smile made his teeth look even longer and even sharper. "I hate cats!" Minnie shouted with fear. Fluffy stopped smiling. "Cats are bad!" Fluffy's little green heart broke. He wanted to be friends with this bouncy little bundle of brown and white, and these words hurt him more than if she had bit him right on the nose. Minnie looked up at Fluffy. She didn't see a cat about to eat someone. She saw a cat that was about to cry. "Don't cry," said Minnie as she looked up at a very sad cat face. "My seeds! My seeds! My seeds!" Grumpy was back to running around in the trees. Hyperactive squirrels don't stay quiet for very long, do they? "That grumpy squirrel was going to bite my tail right off, and you saved me," Minnie realized. She sat down and started to think. For a long time, without making a sound, a little chipmunk and a tuxedo cat sat together under cedar boughs. "Maybe we could be friends," Minnie thought. "But what sort of games could a cat and a chipmunk play?" Fluffy smiled. This time, Minnie wasn't frightened. "We could play tricks," Fluffy answered. "We could play tricks of green." Fluffy was a tuxedo cat, a thinking cat, a trickster cat, a happy cat, a cat with a bouncy little bundle for a friend. And who do you think they were going to play their little trick of green on? Chapter 12. A Trick of Green. One day, when the rich zipping woman was just about to zip out of her kitchen door, she saw a black and white tuxedo cat in her backyard. "It's Fluffy!" shouted the woman. She was so happy to see Fluffy, but then she noticed Fluffy was getting ready to pounce on a poor, defenseless chipmunk. This woman had a gentle heart, and as happy as she was to see Fluffy again, she didn't want to see him eat up this cute little chipmunk. She zipped out the door and tried to catch him. When the woman came out the door, Fluffy jumped at the chipmunk. The chipmunk bounced away from Fluffy. Again, the woman tried to catch Fluffy. Again, Fluffy jumped. Again, the chipmunk bounced away. The woman zipped after them. Jump, bounce, zip. She zipped right out of her backyard. Jump, bounce, zip. The woman chased them to the end of the street. Jump, bounce, zip. She chased them all through the city. Jump, bounce, zip, right to the edge of town. Jump, bounce, zip. She chased them and she chased them and she chased them. She chased that cat, trying to eat that poor little chipmunk right out into the country. Jump, bounce, zip. She chased them through a cornfield. Jump, bounce, zip. She chased them through a bright green forest. Jump, bounce, zip. She chased them and chased them. She chased them all the way up a mountain. Jump, bounce, zip. The woman chased them and chased them and chased them all day long until she found herself in a clearing by a mountain lake where branches brushed soft against gentle ground. Fluffy stopped. Then Minnie stopped. And then the woman stopped. My seeds! My seeds! My seeds! Someone was running back and forth in the trees, knocking spinning seeds and tumbling nuts to the ground. The woman looked up and saw a hyperactive squirrel zipping back and forth in the trees. "Where am I?" asked the woman as she looked around. There were trees, there were birds, there was the sky, and there was a million smells tickling her nose as she stood in the middle of this clearing by a lake. Slowly the sun slipped behind the trees, and the lake shone like a shadowy mirror as everything became very, very quiet. "I'm lost," the woman realized. She started to get frightened. "It's getting dark." The woman looked for Fluffy and Minnie, but they had disappeared. "I'm all alone." Then the woman noticed there was a little cabin on the other end of the clearing. One step at a time, she walked up to the door of this lonely cabin. When she got there, the door opened, and a man stood before her. The woman looked at the man. The man looked at the woman. The woman smiled. The man smiled. "Can I stay here?" asked the woman. "I'm lost." "You can stay here for as long as you want," the man answered. And from the far end of the clearing, from under cedar branches, there came the giggling of a cat and the giggling of a chipmunk. Minnie and Fluffy knew that the man and the woman would live happily ever after with hearts of green. And if you watch very, very carefully, very, very quietly, maybe one day you too will see a forest cat, a black and white tuxedo cat, the kind of cat who likes to hide in bushes. And maybe this cat will have a bouncy little bundle of brown and white for a friend. And maybe, just maybe, they will play a little trick of green just for you.